Hi there. Did you know that you are the placebo? And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Joe Dispenza's amazing book, You Are the Placebo. 5 stars for the actual book, 6 stars if you apply what he talks about in the book. So fantastic book, so I'll talk about it shortly. So welcome very much to the Life Masterclass podcast series, coming to you all the way from beautiful Bali, and it's a gorgeous day here in Bali. Keeping things practical. This is the episode where I talk about one of my favourite books. I've read, 500 plus books in the non-fiction space. So talking about some of my absolute favourites. So this is an absolute favourite from one of my favourite authors, Dr. Joe Dispenza. I've done a lot of work. I've read his 4 books. And just recently I was talking to a coaching colleague of mine that again has read all of his work and attended some of his week-long retreats like myself, and we were talking about which is the best Joe Dispenza book for referring someone into his work to really get the essence of it. And Joe Dispenza is this amazing guy who's been bringing together the metaphysical and science for a couple of decades now. And the metaphysical is like, beyond the physical, like, this intangible, this consciousness, this spontaneous healing, these unexplainable things, and starting to bring them together with the scientific method of measuring these things. So in his retreats, he'll go right into that. So we decided, my colleague and I, that You Are the Placebo is as a powerhouse. It's the 3rd of his books. First book is Evolve Your Brain. Second book is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Another awesome book. This one, You Are the Placebo, really gets in, and he's a fantastic teacher because what he wants to do is actually teach you that you actually have more control over what happens to you at a physical level and, in this world at large by what's happening within inside of this noggin, this head of yours, this mind and brain, this consciousness thing. So he's gone deep dive into understanding that. And he talks about in the book, and the beautiful thing about the book You Are the Placebo is he sort of gets into the science so you can understand at a scientific level, this thinking creates this processing in my body, this biochemistry. This thinking I do, if I do it repetitively, then it creates a genetic expression. So my thinking actually influences my genetic destiny. He starts myth busting some of the things about, you're fixed with your genes. So he talks about, from a very scientific perspective, all of those things. And the other thing, he gives great examples of the placebo effect in action. And I'm going to read one of them out now. It's pretty impressive. So a 2007 study at Harvard by psychologists Crum and Langer involving 84 hotel maids is a perfect example. At the start of the study, and I'm just checking that I've got my mic on, I do. At the start of the study, none of the maids knew that the routine work they performed in their jobs exceeded the Surgeon General's recommendation for a healthy amount of daily exercise, 30 minutes. In fact, 67% of the women told the researchers that they didn't exercise regularly, and 37% said they didn't get any exercise. After this initial assessment, Crum and Langer divided the maids into 2 groups. They explained to the first group how their activity related to the number of calories they burned, and told the maids that just by doing their jobs, they got more than enough exercise. They didn't give any such information to the second group, who worked in different hotels from the first group and so wouldn't benefit from conversations with the other maids. So they were the control group. 1 month later, the researchers found that the first group lost an average of 2 pounds, 1 kilogram if you're doing the other metrics, lowered their percentage of body fat, and lowered their systolic blood pressure by an average of 10 points. Even though they hadn't performed any additional exercise outside of work or changed their eating habits in any way, the other group doing the same job as the first remained virtually unchanged. So he has example after example in this book about the placebo effect in action. So there's an example of someone just doing what they do a belief that they don't exercise because they don't go to the gym and work out, or they don't do their Zumba class or whatever it is. So they have this belief, I don't exercise. And then someone says, oh, no, no, no. And someone in a lab coat with official sort of looking and sounding says, no, you actually do the equivalent of what the Surgeon General says is appropriate, 30 minutes per day. They start believing, oh, I do exercise. And the I do exercise, this thinking, actually changes what happens at a physiological level. They lose, 2 pounds, 1 kilogram of weight. They drop body fat. So there's a physiological response by just tweaking nothing other than the thinking that's happening in someone's mind. So, Joe Dispenza has example after example to show you what happens when we change our belief. He talks about Dr. Mosely in the book, and Dr. Mosely wanted to see if there's an effect with the placebo effect when it comes to doing physical surgery. So we all sort of, know the concept of the placebo effect of, if I believe something's going to work, I take this sugar tablet in this test and I sort of have a good result because I believed it, that sort of stuff. So most of us accept that, but the idea of, is knee surgery actually affected by the placebo effect? You betcha, and you might have to read the book to check it out. Or I tell you what I'll do, I'll put in the link down below, a link to Dr. Mosely on YouTube where there's an interview and it talks about the actual experiment where he showed that the placebo effect even worked in physical surgery. Just a mind bender. The other thing Joe Dispenza talks about in this book, most of us might be familiar with the placebo effect, and it's sort of agreed, 30% is around about the effect of the placebo effect, but it can actually be, much greater than that. It can be all the way through to 100%. There's examples Joe Dispenza talks about in the book of people taking poisons and not having any effect because they believe these things won't have any effect on them. Now, I don't recommend doing that, just read the book and see those examples. So we might be familiar with the placebo effect, we may not be familiar with the nocebo effect. A nocebo effect is the opposite. So placebo, we think something's good's going to happen and that happens. Nocebo is the same as if we keep playing the program that something's going to go wrong, we actually start creating the biochemistry to create that event. For example, if we keep telling the story that all the males in our family die of heart attacks by the time they're 50, if I keep playing that story and I get really fearful of that story and I have the biochemistry of fear, I have that additional cortisol, like different things happening in our body, there's a possibility that I could die before 50 of a heart problem, not because I necessarily had a genetic problem, but because I had this nocebo effect going. So it's really important to understand this. And one of the things, like I said, that makes Joe Dispenza's a 5-star book turn into a 6-star book is if you actually do the work. If you follow the work of Joe Dispenza, if you do some of these guided meditations, and the guided meditations are designed to change what's happening in this internal dialogue, the stories we're telling, like, changing some of those beliefs. So if we can actually do the work that he talks about, and he's got meditations relating to, each of his books and a lot of his work, and if you can get along to one of his week-long retreats, it'll blow your mind. There's healing experiences happening all the way through that, mystical experiences, so many things come out of that. I've seen some amazing stuff happen physically for people at some of these events over the course of 7 days. So I've seen it live in person, the effect of it. So my main aim out of doing this book review on the placebo effect is so that you go and read the frickin' book. The frickin' book is awesome. And then if you want, gold stars or platinum stars, do the work. Game changer, life changer, absolutely change the course of your life. Not only physically, but what actually starts happening in your life. You start influencing the unified quantum field that happens around you. And Joe talks about that in this book and his next book. So hopefully I introduce you, if you're not already familiar with Joe Dispenza's work, highly, highly recommend it. An amazing teacher, an amazing neuroscientist, an amazing researcher, amazing storyteller. The book's interesting, they're good fun to read, and you get so much out of them. And again, if you take that information out and then apply it, you're changing the course of your life. So do check it out. Okay, finally, if you have any desire to do any work with me, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll put the details down below. If you enjoyed this and you think someone else might need a bit of a nudge over the line for a book like this, let them know. Next month, I'm going to have an interview, a guest interview, conversations with Carl, with Sarah Kavanagh, one of my coaching colleagues, and she's familiar with the Joe Dispenza work. So we get into talking about Joe Dispenza's work in more depth and more detail. We also look at other modalities that each of us use and that we use for our clients that get the greatest results for them, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically. So if you're interested in checking that out, make sure you sign up for either on Podomatic or subscribe on YouTube, or sign up to my newsletter. My newsletter I send out and remind you of the podcast that I've got coming up. So that's a weekly newsletter. Otherwise, I hope, I said quite a few times. Sorry about that. And I almost said it again. Wherever you are on this beautiful, gorgeous, incredible planet of ours, I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic day and take care.